So today we are talking about how to be an intellectual. Okay. So this could also be called how not to look stupid, dumb, and ignorant. Because that's really kind of what happens sometimes when you aren't an intellectual. And we don't want that. We don't want that. In this episode, we are going to break down 15 things to do to become an intellectual. Let's get into it.
Yeah, that's how you work it, lady.
Okay, so first of all, if you clicked on this video, big kudos and congratulations to you because you probably already are an intellectual. I think a lot of people kind of are. It's just they don't really lean into it as much as they should. So, just simply wanting to seek out more information on how to become an intellectual, you're already like halfway there. So, let's just go ahead and get into the topics, and I am going to give you tidbits and tricks and all kinds of things throughout this episode. But let's start with number one. Okay, it is about knowing current events. All right, so we want to be intellectually sharp because we want to understand what is happening in the world around us. We want to know what's happening with economic science, healthcare, culture, global conflicts, all of those things, because there's nothing worse than having a conversation with someone and you maybe bring up something that you've seen on the news or something like that, and they just have literally no clue what you're talking about. Now, I'm not talking about things that are specific to one area. If you live in one state and someone else lives in another, like it's not global news, but I'm talking about global news things, that happen, big topics that affect a country as a whole. We should know what's going on. Number one, for our own safety, because right now we are living in some pretty turbulent times. So, if we're kind of walking around la di da and don't know what's going on, that could be dangerous for us and our family and friends. And again, when these things are brought up and we are clueless, we just look, unfortunately, not very bright. And it's not a good look. It just isn't. And then for those of us who do volunteer work, we talk to the public a lot. So if we're talking to the public, we're doing carts, we're doing whatever it is that we're doing, and people will come up to us and be like, "Oh, this is how I feel. This is what's happening." And if we have no clue, now we just look tone deaf and outdated, and just like a bunch of like just it just is not a good look. We need to be intellectuals and know about current events if we're going to be engaging in any kind of public service, because we are supposed to be there for people to talk to get understanding about the future and to give them encouragement and all of that about, all the good things to come. So again, like if we're not doing that, it isn't only gonna like be a hindrance for us, okay? So again, this is going to also be important because you want to be equipped so that you can then critically think about what's going on in society and make informed decisions, okay? So all right, now number 2. This one is one that could get you in a lot of trouble. An intellectual understands that intelligence includes cultural awareness. Okay. So you should know the basic values, customs, traditions, religions, and community styles of major cultural regions around the world. So think Africa, Asia, Europe, Middle East, and Latin America. Like you should kind of know, like, hey, in Latin America, most people are Christian. You shouldn't be like, oh, there's a bunch of Muslim people living in Latin America. You should know that most of those people are going to be in the Middle East. There's always exception to the rule, but again, we have all these studies and kind of publishings that each country puts out on their demographics. So everybody surveys their people, and this is how they make and publish these national and international reports that let you know, hey, what are the local, racial groups? What are the religions? What are, the customs? All these things. So again, this just makes you culturally aware so that when you meet someone from these places, you are not insulting them because you don't know anything about their culture. In the modern times, this is 2026. Like, you can't, it just is not cute. It's just not a good look walking around not knowing anything about the major regions of the world. You don't have to know every remote island or, minute culture. We can only like know so much at a time, and that's okay. But like, mixing things up and really just not knowing anything at all is just very weird, completely tone deaf, and of course, really dumb. Okay, so if that is you, if you've ever done that, like, mix someone up, or like, if someone is like, oh, I'm from Taiwan, and you're like, oh, I love kimchi. Like, you look so dumb. Like, that's not a good look, okay? You obviously don't know the difference between the different types of Asian and the different types of Asian foods, and it's not a good look, girl. Girl, you look a hot mess. You need to get yourself together, and it's not cute, okay? One resource that you could visit is called the Cultural Intelligence Center, and they just kind of like, break down some things and just give you some information about all the different cultures and things. Just remember, smart people can understand perspectives beyond their own environment. So a lot of people live in one area their whole life, and so their whole self-awareness, their being, their understanding is only about people who look and move throughout the world in the same way as they do. And while that's understandable, because you can't live in two places at once, right? You can't live halfway, in America and halfway in Europe or whatever. It does take time to move about the globe, and there's so only so much time and all of that, that and money and all that. So it's not necessarily even about moving about the globe, although that could certainly help. But you do need to know more than just your own environment, because otherwise, girl, you looking real set up. Okay. So, number three, know global demographics and human diversity. Now, this factors in with number two, but I want to go a little deeper on this. So, this means understanding world populations, ethnic diversity, geography, migration patterns, languages, population trends. So, when you think migration patterns, like knowing, like, okay, people from here migrated into here, like, even one example of that is Egypt, thousands and thousands of years ago, the original Egyptians looked one way. They had a bunch of battles and things and everything. And then now other people have migrated into Egypt, and you have this kind of, different looking people that are also Egyptians, but there was a migration pattern that happened there that made that happen. And similar things happen in other parts of the globe. So, kind of knowing a little bit about that, it just is again going to raise your awareness when you meet people from these different regions. It also makes you not as easy to trick, because sometimes people go to a different country and they want to give you this cockamamie view of like what their country is about, and you can be like, yeah, no, I've read about this. This is published world history that like everybody knows, and you're just trying to like make yourself look better or make a certain group look worse and everything. So then you're also not falling for tricks that people pull as well, which also makes you more of an intellectual. You're able to keep yourself safe, your family safe, and you're able to know what's true and not true, which is really gonna help you out and take you far. Okay. So understanding, human diversity helps you to think again beyond your own environment, and also knowing that, some people are genetically diverse, they're ethnically diverse, knowing the different diversities that make up a different group of an area. Again, all of that really helps. Okay. So number four is a different one, and I stand firmly on this one. Read more nonfiction than fiction. Okay. There are so many more interesting things that are true and factual that you can learn from, and that can empower you to be a better person to yourself and to other people when you read nonfiction. Okay. Like reading fiction as an adult, I'm sorry, y'all. When people tell me about the latest, like, oh, fiction book that they read, I'm like, girl, you really, like, that's all you have time to do. Like, we supposed to be helping people, and you sitting up here reading books about bunny rabbits, turning into people, or a new space thing that's like all made up. Like, it just I'm not saying don't read it, but I'm saying prioritize reading nonfiction. And again, if you notice, a lot of people who only read fiction tend to be very out of touch with reality. This is the same person when you ask them, like, "Oh man, did you see, what happened in this country?" Or, "Oh man, did you see? Wow, we got to be careful about this because now there's a new update on some health thing or whatever like that." This is the person who's gonna have no clue what you're talking about because they are reading 10,000 page fiction books that just take the mind into this fantasy world, and they are totally brain dead to the real world, and it's just unhealthy. Like, again, it's 2026. Things are getting worse, not better. And so to me, it's just a massive waste of time to like be reading fiction books as a grown adult. I feel like fiction books are great for kids when you are learning them, from ages like 0 to like, I don't know, maybe even 12 could be the cutoff. But I already know as my kids age and they get to some of the bigger ages like 12 and all that stuff, it's gonna be a cutoff with the fiction books. Like, a fiction book will be a treat like once every few months, but your daily reading is going to be nonfiction. Learn about somebody who did something important. Um, those of us, who have our weekly meetings, everything that we are reading about is nonfiction. You know what I mean? Like, it's real things. And again, knowing more things that are happening in the world are going to help you to be more well rounded in that area too. So, you want to read things, read more about history. We're doing that every week at our meetings, also. We're reading history. So, read about world history. So, now you're expanding on that. It's going to make you an even better teacher. Read up on psychology, read up on economics, read up on health from a reputable source, not the health crazies, but reputable sources. NIH, all these places, Mayo Clinic, Harvard Med, all these, read there on health. Read up on business, read up on science, read biographies. And girl, if reading ain't for you, watch a documentary. Now, even with documentaries, you have to be careful because documentaries can be very slighted. Like, if a person is producing their own documentary, of course they're going to, try to give you the idea that you know whatever idea they want you to know. Like, I'll say that sometimes you don't get like the raw unfiltered, and the same can be true of autobiographies, but at least you are still learning something, even though it might be kind of watered down or slanted from a one perspective or whatever. You're still learning about something real. So, if reading isn't your thing, watch documentaries. There's a ton of great documentaries on Netflix. Amazon has great documentaries, and actually, a lot of YouTubers make great documentaries, and those are just free on YouTube. Okay, so you have to do your research and make sure the information is at least somewhat credible. But sometimes when I've watched a documentary, I've then gone on to do more research on a topic, and I'm like, yo, I didn't even know this. Like, this is so cool. Like, wow, And then again, once you are in these conversations with people, just walking about, minding your business, now you've got a way to be involved in a more intelligent conversation, because that's really what being an intellectual is about, being able to have intelligent, meaningful conversations and interactions with people. Like, that's really what it's about. And it's hard these days because I just feel like so many people are just brain dead. Like, they're just full of mindless content. All they know how to do is make like off color jokes, especially the men. It's like always an off color joke. It's always something lewd. It's always something dumb. It's just like no substance, to most people. And so it just gets really frustrating. I'm just going to do a personal share. I get really frustrated because I feel like there aren't a lot of people who have interest in nonfiction anymore. Like, most people don't like history, which again is really weird to me if you go to meetings every week and then you say you don't like history, but you're reading about it every week. I mean, it's like people don't even put that connection together. Like, so yeah, and like I just get really frustrated. Like, sometimes I'm maybe, out with a certain group, or, maybe I'm in a car group, or maybe I'm, just wherever. And it's just like the conversations are so dull because people just don't like care about anything but what's a hee hee ha ha funny, or something silly, or, just sharing their latest, nonfiction thing. Like it, I don't know, y'all. I just can't. But anywho, this matters because it's going to help you build expertise. It's going to help you build your vocabulary. It's going to strengthen your mental framework, and it's also going to strengthen your reasoning ability. We hear that word so much. Reasoning ability, build reasoning ability. Like that is so much of what we learn every single week. And this is a way you strengthen your reasoning ability by being an intellectual, knowing more than just what you have to know, but going above and beyond and learning some other things just for your own personal development. Okay. So expanding your understanding of history, science, business, all these things is going to help you to become an intellectual. Okay. So let's move on to number 5. Learn the art of communication. Okay. Literally learn the art of communication. Why this is going to be important. An intellectual is not just knowledgeable, but they can communicate ideas clearly and effectively. So here is where you're going to immediately be able to tell if somebody is an intellectual or not. Maybe there's some type of challenge, let's say a time challenge, right? Like maybe you're out with the group, like, and you're supposed to meet up for dinner, right? But you're all going to shop around this area and then you want to meet up for dinner. The people in the group who get very overwhelmed by simply trying to figure out what time and where everybody should meet up for dinner, these are people who do not have the art of communication. Okay. When simple things trigger anxiety, when simple things trigger anger, or like you ask someone a question like, hey, I was thinking maybe I could meet you here at 6:30. Oh, well, I don't know. Well, I was thinking this. Like people who go immediately into anger, they don't know how to communicate. Honestly, I'm so tired of this. I just don't even bother like talking to people like this anymore. Like once I could tell you don't know how to communicate, or you have very little to add, or you're very dull, or your first knee jerk response is anxiety or anger when you're trying to simply like, hey, let's all meet up here, or hey, what time is good for you, or maybe working through a small challenge or disagreement that arises. People who go straight to anger or overwhelm, these are not people you want to be around. These are people who need to do some deep mental work. These are people who, again, only read nonfiction, or I'm sorry, these are people who read fiction. They're in their own little world all the time, in their own little head, with bunny rabbits running through fields and, hippity hoppity and whoop de doo. They are not dialed in. They're not. Anybody could change. It is possible, but right now they're not ready to receive you because you are a communicator. Just again, the fact that you are listening to this, that already your wheels are already turning. You already want to be an intellectual. So again, this one is literally massive. So this is going to be including having the ability to speak clearly, listen carefully, asking thought provoking questions, explaining complex ideas simply. Okay. The people who you ask them a simple question and they've got to give you like a 5-minute response and you basically ask them a yes or no question. These are people who aren't secure with themselves. These are people who don't know how to communicate. Okay. So always take that as a red flag. All right. And again, minimize your engagement with these people. You know what I mean? Because they're only going to frustrate you and they're not. The art of communication is just like any relationship. It's about, can you kick tennis ball. Can you hit the tennis ball back and forth? That's what it is. So I say something intellectual, you say something intellectual. I say something intellectual, you say that. You need people who can do that bang, 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 back and forth with you. When you serve that ball, girl, and it falls flat on the ground, or you could tell they don't even want to be in the game, okay? Girl, don't even waste your time. They need to go and do the mental work. It's 2026. We all have to start developing ourselves. Like, literally, it is way too much. So, again, why the art of communication is going to matter? Leadership. When you're out with your family, or that's a good example. So, let's say you're out with like your husband's family, right? And maybe you kind of have been elected as the leader, or maybe someone is just a big mouth and they elect themselves as a leader, but they're not a good leader because they don't speak clearly and they're not an intellectual and they don't usually know what they're doing. Now, if you know the art of communication, you could kind of reel this person in and ask some more questions like, hey, well, I know that, the kids want to do this and your kids want to do that. And maybe we could all do this. What do you think about that? Now, when you know the art of communication, that person who does not know the art of communication is going to be a little less frustrating because you at least know what to do. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, because sometimes people are so crazy they don't even want any type of like guidance, leadership, or not even that, just like being able to meet halfway and problem solve. They just want to do what they want to do and they want everybody to just follow what they do. And that is not someone who has the art of communication. Okay. Remember, great thinkers often become great communicators. So, again, once you're doing some of these other steps that we've already talked about, you're going to do better in these situations where you have to communicate or even stand up when you need to. Okay. Let's go to number 6. No basic health science. You should understand the basics of nutrition, exercise, sleep, hormones, metabolism, prevention, and mental health. Just the basics. You do not have to be a doctor. You do not have to be a scholar, but you need to know the basics on some of these just to prevent yourself from being a victim of misinformation, as well as preventing you and your loved ones, your friends, your family from being victims of miscommunication. Prime example, you're out with a group of, ladies, and one person in the group is like, hey, you know what's been really, I think is so cool. And what I'm doing is I'm ingesting mint essential oil. I'm taking 5 tablespoons each day, and I listened to this one TikToker, and they said it will grow your hair. Like, you're not gonna fall victim to stuff like that, and you'll be able to give a kind but intellectual response. Oh, wow. Okay, thanks for sharing that with me. Well, I had done some reading on CDC about essential oils, and while they have a lot of good uses, there is a lot of research that suggests that ingesting, eating, drinking essential oils could actually, have some really adverse and bad health consequences. So thanks for sharing. I don't think I feel safe to do that, and you may want to think about it. I could send you that article on CDC if you like. Up to you, totally personal. I respect you and I thank you for sharing. So that's what that can look like when you're an intellectual. It's like we have to apply some of these principles to everyday life. So we want to season our words with salt, but we also, don't want to just be a yes person. Whatever someone says, no matter if it's crazy, convoluted, weird, out in left field, we're just, oh yeah, really? Oh, okay. Not a good look. Not a good look. Okay. So again, knowing where to go for reputable health information, like knowing to go to CDC or NIH or, Harvard Health, Mayo Clinic, all these places, American Heart Society, like knowing where to go for good information is also going to make you an intellectual. It's going to make you look more intelligent than the person who's shouting out, yeah, this person I saw on Instagram was talking about. The minute someone says this person that I seen on Instagram and they share no other facts about their background, like it's different if someone's like, oh, I follow this doctor on Instagram. that is a surgeon and makes like surgery safety tips or something like that. That's different. That's what we want. But these people who are just basically influencers and have all their little people regurgitating like all the things that they say, it just is not a good look. And this is something that really makes people look unintelligent when they do that. What I've started doing is being silent when people talk about health misinformation. If there's a group, I kind of will just not participate in the conversation, and when the conversation fizzles, I'll change the subject. And I looked in my rear view one time, and I noticed that the person kind of was looking like, maybe I shouldn't have said that. Sometimes that's enough because what I'm learning as I grow and develop is on certain topics I feel strongly about, I can be like, kind of like little strong and prone to like getting angry and agitated, which we just learned about number 5. So that was the art of communication. That was what number 5 was that we were talking about here. So that's one area that I identified that I need to become more of an intellectual. Like I need to be able to, when people are saying things that aren't true or make me angry about health misinformation, um, I need to be able to like either be quiet and let my silence be a little strategic, or I need to add something in such a way that my words are seasoned with salt and I can give the person something to think about rather than just being like, hey, what you're saying is really dumb and don't ever say that again. Like, that's not nice. That's not, what we want to do. So I have to give myself props because recently I was in a situation where I could have really went hard in the paint and I was like, I got to stop going hard on people. That's not an intellectual move. So I'm proud of me for that. I'm going to give myself a round of applause for that. So if that's you, girl, and you have improved, give yourself a round of applause as well. Okay. Let's go on to I almost skipped one. Let's go on to number 7. So know the basics about history and your local regional history. So let's focus on that part, regional history. Like if you live in an area, like knowing who founded the area, knowing some of the struggles and challenges from an economics perspective, knowing some of the different social issues. And even though we a lot of us don't really get involved in politics like that, even knowing some of that stuff, and the only reason that this one is going to be good for you is sometimes we get new people moving into our area, and again sometimes we are doing a public work, we may be at carts or whatever like that, and when we're engaging with the public we can share some of these things like, oh, if you like for example, nature hikes. There's a great nature hike that leads to this place. It was actually a building that was used as a station during World War II. And you could see some historical facts there, and you and your family might love it. Oh, now whatever else you have to say has validity to it because it's like, oh, this person is smart. This person knows stuff about their local region. And so now everything else that we say, people can be like, okay, I can kind of trust this person. Like they know things. They know things. So again, knowing your personal area, the reason why this one sticks out to me is because I have lived in a lot of different places at this point, and I can recall so many times when I'm like, hey, I'm new here, like where are the cool places to go? And people are like, oh, I don't go anywhere. I don't do anything. I just go to work and come home. And it's just like, but you live here. Like you don't know nothing about your area. You can't tell me where to go shop. You can't tell me the historical landmarks and things that I want to see and take my kids to. You can't tell me like, you know, any of this. Like it's just weird to me, like not to know anything. And each region has a lot of information on this topic. So you don't have to know it all. We don't have to know it all, but even just having one or two talking points like, hey, I'm fairly new here, but I do know this might be a place you want to check out. It's really pretty. Or hey, if you like swimming, there's a beautiful natural waterfall that you can hike to that's really like only it's a 2 minute hike off the road and you'll just love this place. The water's beautiful. A lot of tourists come from all around. Like these are the things that are binding, that give you social currency and make you a resource. And this is what keeps people coming back to you like, oh, thank you so much for that. Oh, that was cool. Hey, so and so knows something about this. Let's see if so and so maybe knows something else, about the area or whatever. So again, it just gives you cultural competency. It just helps you to be an intellectual, okay? Let's go on to number 8. Gotta take a little drink. All right, so number 8, learn critical thinking and logic. Like, have you ever been in a conversation with someone and they say something and you're like, how does that logically make sense in your mind? I wish I had like the perfect example for you, but it's like, how does that make any kind of logic? Like it just does not make any sense. Like, so don't do that. Like, be a critical thinker, and again, you are not going to be able to have critical thinking ability if you're not doing all these other pieces that we talked about. Like if you only read um fiction books, if you don't watch documentaries, if you don't engage in the local culture, if you don't know who founded your local town, and like all those things, you're not going to have critical thinking and logic, because this is a skill that you have to develop. Without critical thinking, knowledge can become dangerous because there's a lot of information out there. Again, we've talked about misinformation, and you have to problem solve. So you have to be like, okay, well, I read this here and I read this there, and those were reputable sources. This doesn't align with what I read there. And so then the issue is you go out with a group of people and people are having a conversation and you say something that's just completely not logical at all. And so now people are like, oh, uh-huh, okay. And now people are going to talk behind your back. Let's face it, people do it. Even the nicest people, even though we know we're not supposed to do it. It's like, yo, did you hear what she said at dinner? How does that make sense to her? Like, how dumb is that? And we don't want that for ourselves and our loved ones. So, like, you have to work on critical thinking skills. And this isn't something that's about IQ. Like, none of this stuff, it's not about being an IQ person, memorizing random facts. Like, no one likes a brainiac. Like, it's not somebody that is just randomly walking around sharing scientific things and history things and using big words just to make themselves look smarter than everybody else. It's simply critical thinking, being able to communicate, having cultural competence, and like being a good person. Like that's all this really boils down to. Okay. Let's move on to number 9. Learn basic economics, y'all. There is nothing that can make you look more unintelligent and not an intellectual than not knowing basic economics, not understanding inflation, taxes, supply and demand, debt. Okay. Debt is one that will reveal that you don't know what you're doing with your life and make you look. So, this is something you really want to give some thought to. Like some people will be like, "Oh, yeah, I put this on my credit card, but my credit card has 30% interest rate." And it's like, why do you even have that credit card? So I'm a person that listens when people talk. Like if you tell me you have a credit card with 30% interest, unless you're also telling me that you hate that credit card and you're closing it, if you think a 30% interest rate is a good thing and you think that's normal, you're telling me that you don't know basic economics because you should know enough to do the math and know that you are never paying that off, bro. Like it ain't happening. Okay? So like simple things, or people who um love the idea of like leasing cars. Like it unless you just have so much money and you just don't care. You're like, "Hey, I want to have a new car every 4 years." Okay, but if you think leasing is like you're actually doing something better than buying a car, like, "Oh, why would anybody buy a car when they could just lease?" Like that just is not bright at all. Like it just isn't because leasing a car is going to put you more in debt. You're never going to get to a point of paying that car off and being able to save that 400 or whatever that price of that lease is each month. When you buy a car and you can pay it off, you're going to have at least a couple of years of having that car without a payment, which gives you the ability to then save money. So again, if you are super rich and you just love leasing cars because you just want to have a new car every few years, more power to you. But when you think this is better than buying a car or even buying a older car that is used and driving an older car because it's something that you can afford and you're um, modest with how you spend your money, those are good things. Being flashy and overspending and running up credit card debt and, buying expensive clothes that you can't afford because you think that makes you look like an intellectual, it's actually doing the opposite. Like for me, I had one person tell me one time that their car payment was $1,600 a month, but they live in an apartment. Stop and think about that for a minute. Your car payment is $1,600 a month, but you live in an apartment. Unless again you're just uber rich and don't care at all about money, and you just are like, I know I'm throwing money away, but I move a lot and I have money. I'm a multimillionaire. This does not apply to you. But the average person that is middle class or lower, which is most of us, if you are paying $1,600 for a car and you live in an apartment where your rent is going to go up every single year, and you're paying $1,600 by 1,600 a month for a car by choice, you like that car, it's flashy, it makes you look rich. You do not know basic economics and you are not an intellectual. So again, these are the things that the world tells you makes you an intellectual. It is not true. People who actually have money and who are responsible with their money and modest with their money, they move in silence. They don't need to pay $1,600 car payments for fancy, expensive, flashy cars to make people think that they're something that they're not. That is unintelligence. That is not an intellectual. Okay? Like that is that's how a lot of people feel about that. That's how I feel about that cuz it's like, okay, don't hit me up for money when you just told me you're driving this expensive Mercedes and paying $1,600 a month, then you want to come ask somebody to help you pay your bills. You're doing this to yourself. So again, number 9, learn basic economics, know how to manage your own money, know how to be modest with your money and make good financial decisions. That is what is important. Okay, let's move on to number 10. We touched on this a little bit, but we need to also have a basic understanding of psychology and human behavior. Um, Things that this is going to influence is your motivation, your habits, emotional regulation, which is huge in society today because most people are emotionally unregulated, prone to fits, prone to anger, prone to all that. It also helps you to be more persuasive. It helps you to be on the lookout for biases. So when you have a lot of biases, that can snowball into being almost like borderline. I don't want to say racist, but it could lead you. It can certainly lead you into that when you have a bunch of biases and preconceived ideas, a bunch of assumptions. that aren't based on anything. And again, people make assumptions. The people who are prone to making assumptions and have a lot of biases are people who don't watch documentaries, people who only read fiction books, and people who don't know nothing about their area or their country, like history, none of that stuff. These are the same people. So again, this is why this is important to be an intellectual so you don't have these biases. You also don't fall victim to like negative group behaviors. So it's going to have give you the ability to have stronger relationships because you're more self-aware. Like when you know that basics of like psychology, for example, that when someone is grieving the loss of a loved one, that there are stages to grief. If you know that, you will be able to identify the stages that that person is in, and maybe one of their stages that they're in is anger, and maybe they just go off on you. An intellectual person will be like, oh, okay, they just had a loss of a family member. They're going through the grieving process, and it looks like they're on about step 2, which is, anger. And so I know this is not them. This is someone that is a really good person. So I'm just going to allow them to be angry right now. And I'm going to like revisit this at a later time. I'm going to kill them with kindness. In the meantime, like I'm going to be there for them. I'm going to love them through this because I know it's not them. The non intellectual will take that personally. The non intellectual will not even think about this person just had a loss because non intellectuals are also usually more self focused, right? They only think about their own feelings because they're often fairy tale land reading fiction books, right? So they don't think about other people's feelings and what make people feel and act and do the things that they do. So they're just unaware. So anything that they can't understand, they just immediately go into defensive mode. Okay, so this is where understanding psychology can come into play. Also, friendship. Let's say you have a friend who maybe their mom like ran out on them, right? Like she just left home one day and never came back, and just, at a critical time in a person's life. So then you may understand that they may have a wound, which is the abandonment wound. And you'll know that because you learned about psychology. So you know, oh, okay, maybe this particular friend gets a little upset when I don't return a text because maybe, this abandonment wound that she has, from her mother who just left and never came back. Maybe she just has a struggle dealing with that. So now you can show this person more grace, more love, more understanding because you're informed. So again, when you can listen when people talk, like, you know, and then apply some of the things that you've learned, it makes you a better friend. It makes you more understanding. And you could even say that to the person, like, hey, like you shared with me that your mom, like left at a critical time in your life. You know, how do you feel, about how this could affect some things? Is there anything you want to share with me that, maybe you communicate in a different way that I can be more respectful of or more understanding on? I had somebody say to me one time, hey, I'm really not good with communication. I just, was pretty sheltered growing up and I'm a little socially awkward. So, like, please don't take offense, but like, I just, this is a skill that I'm learning. And I was like, girl, I appreciate that so much. I was like, first of all, like, you are so amazing and you have so much intellect and so much intelligence, the fact that you're sharing that. See, when we share and we share about ourselves, again, we're doing that tennis match back and forth. We're pushing that ball back and forth. And then now I know how to deal with her. I'm like, oh, okay, no problem. So, like it helps. And so now that I've learned more about psychology and human behavior, I tell people, hey, like when I first meet someone and I could tell we've had some, great interactions, I'll be like, hey, I'm just letting you know I'm a busy mom and sometimes I struggle with punctuality. It's not that I want to come late to things. It's just this is also filters in with some like past things and issues that I've had, and I have issues sometimes being punctual. But know that if I'm not going to show up, I will always let you know in advance. Or if I'm running late, I will let you know. But I'm just letting you know sometimes I am prone to being late. Little things like that go really far with people. So then now, when that situation happens, they're like, oh, she told me about this. Again, that's being an intellectual. It's not about being perfect. It's not about, never making a mistake. It's just about being a good communicator. That's it. Um, okay, let's talk about 11 and then we'll get on to our last one, 12. Okay, so if you're still here, girl, thank you. Because we are learning and working through this together, girls. So, let's talk about 11, which is develop media literacy. We touched on this one a little bit, but it's especially important now because of the use of AI. So, you're gonna have to get good at telling the difference between AI and things that are not AI. Um, because now what I'm finding is when we're talking and then we're engaging it with each other in our different social groups, in our different social settings, I will see a lot of people sharing things that they have seen online. And the minute they show it to me, I could clearly tell it's AI. And then it just makes, again, that person look a little uninformed, a little unintellectual, a little unintelligent, because it's like, okay, you're gonna have to learn the difference between what's AI and what isn't. Now, I will say that with a grain of salt though, because it is going to continue to get harder to tell what is AI and what isn't. So I think to just be a little bit more of an intellectual, it's probably best not to share things that you don't know 100% are real or fake. That's just what I'm doing because I don't ever want to look like I'm not an intellectual or not caring about spreading misinformation. So I'm like, you know what? If I can't tell, girl, I'm just not going to share it. Like, I'm not going to be like, hey, look at this on my phone. And then have everybody in the group be like, girl, what are you talking about? That's AI. That's not real. Somebody already debunked that. It's made up. It's AI. And then I have to be like, oh, my bad. And there's nothing wrong with making mistakes, guys. Even in a situation like that, you could be like, you know what? I should have fact checked that before I showed it. Shame on me. And then people respect you. But I've had people also double down and be like, this isn't AI, this is real. And everybody in the group is like, hey, it's AI. So again, when you get into situations like that, it's just not a good look for the individual. So just thought I would touch on that one. Now let's talk about our last one. Oh, wait a minute. This ain't our last one, girl. We still got a lot to do. I'm sorry. This is number 12. Um, Beauty, grooming, and personal presentation. This is going to be different for everybody. However, there is one hard truth that we are going to have to accept. You are not going to be seen as put together. I'll just say put together, maybe confident, or sometimes even trustworthy if you have a really disheveled appearance all the time. And I know that hurts because it hurts me too because I'm not put together all the time, y'all. Sometimes I look a hot mess. Some of y'all saw me. I came on my Green Circle stories for my private group, and I was just talking to you guys about a situation I was in, and I looked a hot mess. Like I did not look good. It's okay to not look good sometimes, but the rule with this is like 75% of the time you want to look put together. You don't want to look bad 75% of the time. And I think that remaining 25%, like, again, if you look good 75% of the time, if somebody sees you on a 25% off day, it's not gonna mean anything because it's like, oh, well, she's just rushing, or maybe she's not feeling well today. But when you constantly are, kind of just red nosed and crust in the eyes, bad breath, bad teeth hygiene, really, really dirty mouth, smell bad, clothes are disheveled, covered in hair, or, just stuff like that. It's just gonna kind of start to give people a visual perception that might not be true. It might just be that you are an intellectual, you just don't care about putting yourself together that much. Two things could be true at the same time, So, but again, think about how we're encouraged at our meetings, to show up. We don't show up, with our PJs on or like, whatever. We're all supposed to be somewhat put together. So I just try to mimic that in like my whole life. I have places where I'm like, if I'm going to the grocery store, I don't care what I look like. Like I literally don't care. I'm not putting on a ton of makeup just to go to the grocery store. But I know that if I'm at my meetings, if I'm at an assembly, or if I'm at a social gathering, I'm going to, in those settings, try to put myself somewhat together. I don't have to have on lashes. I don't have to be a beauty queen. I don't have to have a full beat face of makeup, but I do need to have on clean, well arranged clothes. I need to have clothes that fit my body in a appropriate way. I need to smell good. Smelling good is big. Not smelling like, I don't know, cleaning products or the dog or the cat. You just don't want to smell like you're like not fresh. It's just not a good look, especially for us as females. Um, it just isn't. So giving some look to your your how people perceive you socially based on your appearance is something good to do. I personally think, minimal makeup is good for most ladies. I feel like a lot of people just subscribe to this idea, which is really not a uh, well-rounded idea. I feel it kind of comes from the idea of, kind of criminalizing femininity. Like, this whole thing about, I've done videos on it, not wearing pink. Like, oh, why would you wear pink? And that's too. So the idea of kind of like, people kind of look down on people who they feel are too girly or too, oh, you're wearing makeup all the time, and oh, you look nice all the time. Anytime you hear people kind of picking at you like that, they don't have the social currency. They don't have the intellect to place value on looking nice. You don't have to look perfect, but you do need to look nice. So, there's a lot we could say about that, but your presentation does make a difference, especially if you are a married woman. We have to consider that. Like our appearance is something that can kind of enhance, our husband's view of us. Just switching it up, looking a little different, because then we feel cute and girly, and they like when we feel cute and girly and do 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 do. So, again, this is not something about being perfect all the time, but we do need to give thought to how we look. When we think of intellectual people, we think of people who are put together, and this is, I think, this is a good way to illustrate the difference between someone who's just intelligent, thinking Albert Einstein, who was very disheveled and not together, but he had a high IQ though, girl. And that's what some people, that's all they care about. But would you say he was also an intellectual? No. Einstein had some very rude things to say about certain groups of people and had some really dumb things to say on other things. And that was because while he had a high IQ, he was not an intellectual. Okay, so again, there's some people who are really smart. Maybe they feel they're too smart to put any work into their appearance. But when you think again about someone who's an intellectual, maybe we could use, I don't know, maybe Michelle Obama as an illustration of that. She's put together. She's not, wearing a glam beat face all the time of makeup, but she does look put together. She speaks well. She respects people. She handles challenges with grace. She's someone who's been insulted a lot, but she's still able to, speak with dignity and grace and all those things. So that's kind of how you can draw that comparison between being intelligent and having a high IQ and being an intellectual. Okay. All right, let's talk about number 13, which is learning a second language. Sometimes that can be cool. This is kind of a bonus one. I don't think you literally have to know a different language to be an intellectual, but it's cool and it helps. I think it's cool because sometimes you can travel a bit more and you feel a little more secure because you know a second language. Even if you don't know a full language, even if you know enough to get by, I know enough Spanish to get by. Don't call me fluent, but I do know enough to get by. So even that could be helpful. People respond well to that. They're like, "Oh my goodness, thank you so much. I'm glad you knew a few languages because I didn't know what that person was talking about. Thanks for helping me." So it just bridges the gap in understanding and communication. So it's good to know a different language. Let's talk about number 14. Spend time around intelligent people. So, again, I would say more so spend time not just around intelligent, but intellectual people. Because remember, the topic of our discussion today is intellectual people. People who challenge your thinking, ask thoughtful questions, expose you to new ideas and information you didn't know, and who can disagree respectfully. I love someone who can disagree on something respectfully. I also kind of like somebody who can disagree disrespectfully. um, but it is 1,000 times better when people can disagree respectfully. Like when someone can say something and they leave kind of that person or that group like, oh, okay, all right, they don't agree, but I got their vibe. Like I'm feeling it. I get why. That's okay. I disagree, but I get it. Like that's what you want. The reason you want this is because this is the type of environment that pushes you to grow faster, and intellectual development often happens socially, right? So, this is something that I think is important. We've all heard, this line here, those having dealings with the stupid become stupid, and those having dealing with the wise become wise, right? So that's what we want. We've all heard that before. We've all learned that before. So we want to do that. So, hanging out with people who are kind of aligned with some of those core things, your basic, core beliefs, and just people who subscribe to being intellectuals, and everybody's going to bring something different to the table. So you might be one type of an intellectual, and then this other person might be a different type of an intellectual, and then the next person is a different type of an intellectual. But you're all intellectuals, meaning you all respect knowledge and learning and communicating effectively. And so you're going to have these just very deep and meaningful conversations when that happens. Again, this is becoming rarer and rarer these days. I feel like as a kid, I would sit back and I would listen to these beautifully intellectual conversations among other older people. And you're a kid, so you're just kind of a fly on the wall hanging out. Um, but now I just feel like even older people are not as bright. And I think that's because now some of the older people, like people who were older when we were like really, really little, some of them have passed away now. And so now people who are older, like maybe they grew up more so in like modern times. So they just are a little more self focused. And, the older generation maybe had more conversations with people. So they learned more and they cared more about what was happening around them. And so now, unfortunately, society is kind of trending down because, just think about like the brand new babies now that are born and they have like all technology and stuff. Like what does that look like as an 80-year-old person? Like, let's just take a baby who's born in 2026 and they spend their life only watching mindless TikTok videos, like not reading a lot and only reading fiction and, only just this very niched existence. And then when they get 80, are they going to have wise things to say to the talk about or the younger generations? No. And so we kind of are already starting to see that. And I just shake my head. Like when I see a person that's like 80 years old and they just got nothing to add, I'm just like, yo, I don't want to be that. I want to be that 80-year-old where people are like, oh my goodness, she is so amazing. Like she knows so much about life and has given me some really good advice. Then that 80-year-old person's like, I don't know. I just survived and did what I do. I don't know. Like, I hate when an older person says, I don't know. Like, I know that might be weird, but I'm like, well, you should know. Like, and there's a way to say you don't know without, like, it's the turning off the conversation. You can say, well, that's something interesting that you shared. I don't know about that, but I have come across this. This might be something that, is kind of along the lines of what you're talking about. But now I hear people who are that old and they say they don't know, like a 5-year-old says, I don't know. Like if you ask a 5-year-old something, hey, have you heard of this? I don't know. Now I talk to 80-year-olds and they're like, I don't know. And they got nothing else to add beyond that. And I'm just like, so you've been on this planet 80 years and you just have not gathered much. Like, it just, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Now, again, people can have cognitive decline, and that is okay. Like, and again, we're not asking for perfection or anything like that. But if you're an older person and you do have your wits about you, you're still driving, you're still, I don't know, all those things. It's nice when you have something to share with the younger generations. I love it. Like, I love listening to people's life experience. Tell me what not to do and what to do. I've learned a lot that way by listening with older people. So yeah, so spend time around I would say intellectuals and older people who are dialed in, older people who care and have had an intellectual existence, right? Um Finally, we are at our last one. Um 15, practice intellectual humility. So, the key thing to being an intellectual is understanding that humility is what keeps learning alive. People who feel that they know everything don't continue to seek out information. They're like, oh, why would I bother? Been there, done that, whatever. Arrogance kills growth. Arrogance kills growth. So if you're arrogant, you're not going to be an intellectual. Like people are not going to gravitate to you because at any age, arrogance is just unappealing. It just like really, really, really is. And you can speak strongly and firmly, all while not being arrogant with it. You know what I mean? Like some people take people who are able to be assertive and be firm and say what they mean and mean what they say, they could take that as being arrogant. But that's not what arrogance is. Being arrogant is simply thinking you are right all the time and your perspective is the only one that matters. It has nothing to do with standing firm on things or being confident in what you say or being a leader. It simply is thinking you're the only one that matters. That is what arrogance is. So, again, two things can be true at the same time. And what you don't want to do is ever simply feel like your opinion is the only one that matters. And so that's why it is important to practice intellectual humility, admitting uncertainties, being open to correction, and changing your mind when presented with evidence. There is nothing more unintellectual and unintelligent that someone than, excuse me, someone who is presented with evidence and still, even with reputable sources, things that have been held to be true through research and literature, and they will still be like, oh no, that's not true. Like, these kind of people are showing that they don't have reasoning ability, which we talked about. And it's arrogant because they feel like even though they're presented with logical facts, that whatever they heard or however they feel is just the end all be all. And that is very strange. So when we can, hear something from someone, maybe we never knew that ingesting essential oils is toxic, but someone presents information to you in a kind and positive way and doesn't force you to believe what they believe, but just says, hey, I'm just letting you know, like, this is what I read on, CDC and NIH. Some people are really having some toxicology type issues with this. Like, be careful. And you go, oh no, the whole CDC is corrupt, and it's all a scam and a conspiracy and blah di da di da di da. This is not someone you want to really, you know. And it's hard because we love everyone. Like, we all have someone like that is very kind and sweet, but then they dig their heels on certain things, and they just don't want to hear what anyone has to say. And it's just so hard with these individuals because it's like, how do you think that this is okay? Like, these are literal facts, and you just choose to believe what you want to believe. And because society has gotten so bad, I can kind of understand why people just are like, I believe this, and this is just how it's always been, and I don't want to hear anything from anybody else. I get why people are getting to that point, or why people get to that point. We could even use older people as an example. Some people have just lived their life, a certain way, and they just feel how they feel. You could show them evidence from any book or reputable organization, and they are not going to hear it. They don't care, and they just rest on, hey, this is how it was since I was a little kid, and I just don't care. So, I can understand that, but at the same time, is that really showing reasoning ability, which is one of the key cornerstones to being an intellectual? Um, is it really good? It really just isn't. And so again, this is how we reveal in conversation who we are. We've all met this person that, will be wrong and strong, girl. They real wrong and they strong on it. And it's just like, you can't tell them nothing, girl. Like, they don't want to hear it. And like, everybody in the group will be like, hey, you're wrong. Hey, that ain't true. And they will just die on that hill. So it is what it is, girl. But anywho, yikes, we have been on here for quite some time. Maybe I should have just kept it at like 5 tips, because 15, it really put us like into the time. But I mean, I'm happy. I love like talking about this stuff. So, it is what it is. There's a lot more to say on this topic. I think I will revisit this a couple of times. So if you enjoyed this conversation, definitely subscribe, because there are other tips to being an intellectual that have nothing to do with any of the topics that I shared today. So I think I would like to explore some of those topics more, because I just love when I can talk with intellectuals, and it's just much more fun and meaningful for me. And then you even get like better humor too. Like, people who, they don't fill their heads with much information. They can't be as witty, and like their humor is very much like centered around like bodily functions, like just really silly stuff, like, oh, someone passed gas, that's really funny. Like, sometimes that's funny, but a lot of the time, like, there's more to being funny than just being, kind of, off off color like that. When you're with intellectual people, like they'll say something that's a joke. Like someone said a joke that was so funny, and it was about like this guy who oh, I'll give you an example. So if you've ever seen the movie, I think it's called Tu Wong Fu or something like that, and it has Robin Williams in it. And he's talking to the three individuals like at the table, and he's like, "Oh, what do you want to do?" And then they're like saying things, and he's like, "Oh, three sisters have Chekhov." Like, if you didn't know who Chekhov was, it's like this guy who he basically had like a three ring type thing going on with this group of sisters, and I think it was even adapted into like a play. I believe it's from Russia. Don't quote me. I'm foggy on the details, but someone who's an intellectual will get that joke. But if you don't know anything about that, you won't get that joke. But it's okay not to get the joke. But the intellectual person, if they don't get the joke, they're the person that looks it up. They're like, who's Chekhov? And they look it up and then they're like, ha ha, that is literally hilarious, you know? So that's the type of humor I like humor that's connected to different things in history or science or whatever. So then the joke goes deeper. Like it's just so funny, so anyway, I hope everybody got that example. But anywho, all right, ladies, I'm gonna hop off of here. I ran my mouth about this a long time today, so I appreciate the listen, the share. I do have a short that I'm gonna be posting that'll just touch on the main 5 things. So if you haven't seen that short, head over to my YouTube and check out the short. And I'll see you next time. Bye bye. I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's important. Welcome to Work It Lady podcast, where it's time to put in the work regarding educating yourself on all areas of your health and well-being. At Work It Lady podcast, we are dedicated to empowering women to take control of their health and mental well-being. Our mission is to provide women with the knowledge, inspiration, and tools needed to transform their lives, from improving nutrition and fitness, navigating womanhood, and if you're a mom, excelling at motherhood. Step 1, like this episode. Step 2, share it with someone you love, and even the haters, they need help too. Step 3, subscribe on podcasts, subscribe on YouTube, join our mailing list to stay in the loop on classes and events. I am so happy you made it here, girl. Thank you.